first off, I think most importantly is how to look up an album. Now, this is one of the key elements to Discogs, and if you don't know how to actually determine what you have, well, then obviously you're going to be at a disadvantage. So first and foremost is how to research an album. So I've got a couple albums here we're going to go through. I'm going to share my screen. That will allow you to actually see what I'm doing very easily. And we're going to dive in and actually start looking up some albums. So first and foremost is, what do you look up? Couple things. So obviously you've got the artist name, you've got the album title. You can start there. You can search by Jimi Hendrix, obviously, and then you can filter down by there. That's going to be a lot slower. You can go off the album name itself. So instead of doing Jimi Hendrix, do Are You Experienced? And you can also go off the catalog number, which if you go on the spine of just about any record that you look up, you're going to have a catalog number that is associated with that album. This one happens to be RS 6261. So let's put that in. I will say most of the time, if you've got an album that's open and it's not sealed, you want to go off what's on the actual disc label, which is obviously here on the record, right? Because the jackets sometimes are used across multiple pressings. So what happens is a record label will press up, let's say 5,000 of a certain album. They may press a couple extra thousand of the cardboard jackets, knowing that if it sells out, they'll do another pressing, but they'll reuse those jackets, so they don't have to set up the printing presses through the jackets again. So that's why it's important to always key off the disc label itself versus the jacket when you can. Sometimes the jackets can give you clues and identifiers, but most importantly, I think, is to go off the disc label. So, like I mentioned, we're going to go to RS 6261 and see where that takes us. I'm just going to start there because that's the bare bones that you need to know to get an album, to get started, right? So as soon as I put in RS 6261, immediately you're going to see a bunch of different albums come up. Some of them are versions of Are You Experienced? Some of them are different albums because there are absolutely catalog numbers that match and variants that match with the same catalog number. But right off the bat, you can see this first one here. I'm just going to click into that one, and that's going to take us to a very specific pressing of Are You Experienced, right? So this happens to be a 1967 pressing. Whether or not it's this exact one, we'll see. But the other route is just to search the album name. So if I go Are You Experienced, let's see here, and I find the actual, all right, here we go. So if I search by Are You Experienced, and now I've got releases up top. So this is a key screen. So this releases up top that I'm scrolling through here that scrolls horizontally. Those are the actual core release pages. Then if you scroll down here, you've got release versions. So you've got two options. You can start up at the main release, or you can go down and take a guess and see if maybe one of the versions that came up is correct. I'm going to start with the main release because that's kind of the core. So you can see from here, this is the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Are You Experienced, first release in 1967. And you've got the See All Versions button. Now, this is every version of this album, not just vinyl. This is cassette, 8-track, CD, DVD, etc., etc. It doesn't matter what format. So you're starting at the very highest level when you go to the release page. So if I click See All Versions here, you'll see what I'm talking about. I can scroll for days in regards to the different formats, all the different pressings. You've got cassettes, like I mentioned, you've got stereo versus mono. It's very overwhelming. If you're just going to search for Are You Experienced and think you're going to find it, it's going to really beat you down. So filtering and sorting is very, very key. So once I come to this See All Versions, so again, I'm on the main release page, I go to See All Versions. This little menu up here on the right is very important because this allows you to filter. So right off the bat, if I filter by format, you can see that there are 345 different versions of this album. But if I drill down just to vinyl or LP, which are pretty much interchangeable, I've got 196. Okay, that's a little better, but still completely overwhelming. If I know this is a stereo versus a mono, which I can see just by looking at the label a lot of times, you can see it's got stereo right down there at the bottom of the label. I can also filter by stereo. So now that's got me down to 94 versions. All right, not bad. Still pretty daunting though. But the key is I can also continue my my filtering. So the next thing I would do are the things I always do: format, filter by format, and then filter by country. So if I come down to US, now I've got 48 to deal with. Now again, this is an extremely popular album, Hendrix's first record. So you can imagine there's a lot of different versions of this. Some albums don't have near this many, some have more. But 48 different versions in the US. Now from here, what you're doing is trying to determine what this label looks like versus which are these. And I've got this in my collection already. So I can tell you by the fact that that has this one here in the middle has my collection, the little collection icon on it is the one. But you can go through here and start swiping through. And the main thing to do is to look at the actual label itself. So you're looking at the way the fonts are laid out, you're looking at the way the text is laid out, and looking for any identifiers that differentiate what's on this disc label versus what's on this picture. So it takes a little bit of trial and error when there are, again, 48 different pressings just in the US on vinyl. But if I come down here to this stereo pressing, I can see, and again, I'll put a close-up of this, but this label right here is exactly what I'm looking at on the screen, and that's what allows me to identify which pressing it is. So once I have the pressing identified, then I can get to work, because then I can start to understand, okay, how valuable is this? I can add it to my collection. I can establish value if I'm looking to purchase another copy, or maybe I'm looking this up to buy my first copy. There's a lot of different things you can do from here, but the first thing is just understanding how to find which album you have, all right?